I'm not seeing it side up. So.
Once again, we've had a full evening already with Board of Education commendations, Culp Auditorium, full house, basically. Well, people are scattered around. There's a lot of people.
Yes.
So we've done the pledge, and there's just a couple of folks. And any modifications to the agenda?
Yeah, I've got two to add on the consent agenda. I'd like to add a supplemental personnel report dated today. And then further down the agenda, when we get to policies, I've been asked to add one on attendance regulation. So if we could add that as well. We get to the policy review part. So I guess that becomes a Roman 5, A 5. Got it.
Gotcha. Good. Got it. And since we're all here, our attendance is, I think, pretty good. Okay. So we'll move on. And my agenda is, and right, moving on to public and staff. This is the opportunity for the public to speak to the board and the community. And so I'm looking. Matt, Tom, Jackson, Brian. So come on up, guys. I did get an email that some folks are going to come, students are going to come speak to the board tonight, and you must be them.
Yeah.
So introduce yourselves, and you're each are taking a few minutes of public comment time, and it's all going to add up to the correct amount since you guys can do math. So go ahead.
Hi everyone, thank you for your time. My name is Nathaniel Day.
I'm Jackson.
Good morning.
I'm Patty.
I'm Thomas. And for our government project this last semester, we had the opportunity to work with some college students working towards their PhD, and we got to learn about city planning. And one of the things that we learned about with city planning was traffic and safety issues. And this is something that we could all really understand, because around the high school, as I'm sure you all know, the traffic is atrocious. And especially on Hugo Street, there's a lot of traffic and people trying to get to school, and it's really not safe. But one idea that we had was that through our research is that the implementation of bike lanes on streets running around Hugo, because we found that it would be very beneficial for everyone trying to use their bikes to get to school.
Alright, so bike lanes would, first off, minimize pedestrian risk and promote safety for both bicyclists and drivers. And like he said, Hugo Street is too busy with both cars on the road and pedestrians on the sidewalk, which leaves minimal space for the bicyclists that bike to school. And so just one of the ideas we came up with was having 2 bike lanes. One of them on Aurora that goes to school, on the right side, obviously, because that's regulation, and one on Tioga coming from the school back to home, I guess. So you'd ride one in and the other back. So this would still allow people to park on one side and allow enough room for cars and bikes to move by. And just the implementation of bike lanes would bring many benefits to both bicyclists and pedestrians in ways such as it will give students a faster, safer, and more convenient way to get to school. It will remove traffic jams caused by bicyclists in the road. It will encourage biking, which is a greener form of transportation, which, you know, Ithaca is all about. They would be present on any major roads like Hugo. You know, Tioga and Aurora aren't used nearly as much as that, so that would reduce a lot of traffic, and it would just promote an orderly flow, which is important in this town.
Another one of the things that we did for our project is we did a sample survey. So we went and surveyed some of the students at the high school, and we were trying to get a feel for their like traffic habits and that kind of thing. So of the 235 Ithaca High School students that we got surveys for, only 14 people actually use their bikes to get to school. And we saw this as an opportunity, we read this as not saying that people didn't want to ride their bikes, but rather that there wasn't enough opportunity for them to ride their bikes. So maybe if we added bike lanes in the areas that would be prudent to do so, that it would actually increase the amount of people who use bikes. In New York City, they started adding bike lanes around, and between 2007 and 2011, and it doubled the number of people who actually used bikes to get around. And of the 235 students who we did survey, 83 people used their car to get around, about half of which got driven to school by their parents, and another half drove to school themselves. And that's a pretty high percentage out of the people that we interviewed. And then the secondary majority was riding school bus, which I guess that's a population we're not really trying to focus on, because that's a form of transit that's already pretty safe. It's pretty efficient because you're using one vehicle for multiple people. So I guess there's that information. So we do have a little bit of information to back up the fact that it's not the safest place to try and ride your bike to school in the morning.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I missed, you said how many students you surveyed, I missed that number.
235.
Okay, thanks.
Just a little sample survey out of the 1,300 kids at school.
All right, so these guys have talked to you a little bit about trying to install bike lanes, but as I think if you heard them mention, it's kind of unfeasible to do it on Hugo Street, seeing it as it is already really crowded and it's really user. So I personally did some research on traffic mitigation on Hugo Street itself. Just last week I was actually in an accident on Hugo Street, and so it was sort of something that really means a lot to me. So I looked at the ways that you can slow down the traffic on Hugo Street, because you have all these students who walk from the downtown area to Boynton, so they're walking, and it's generally like a little unsafe. So I looked at research that has been done and ways to slow down the traffic. And Purdue University in Indiana, actually they have a city planning department, which is really good, and they had a report done a couple years ago where they simply, on a school zone, they would just put up signs that say, this is a school zone, children, etc. And if you notice on Hugo Street, there's really a lack of just simple signs that say, be careful, slow down, there are children around. And if you have these signs, the studies show that it drops speeding accidents by 60%, simply due to the fact that if you look at the psychology, it's like, all right, you're driving, there's another sign, you have to slow down and try to read all the different signs that are there. So that's, just putting up these little signs is something easy that you guys can do. Another thing is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's sometimes...
We're just laughing about the city of Ithaca, but go ahead.
That's not... when you're going to be driving down, maybe, 13 or up by Hasbrook Apartments, there's these speed monitors, and they shoot a radar at you, and they tell you your speed. That too, there was a study by the West Virginia Department of Transportation, and they implemented a bunch of these, and these have dropped speeding accidents by 80%, because again, simple psychology is that, if you're speeding and your speed is above like the speed zone, it'll flash like a cop sign. So the people will be like, oh, maybe they're contacting cops, I don't know what's going on, I'll slow down. And so these are really like simple things that if we install on Hugo Street, I'm really confident that they could do well. And I think with the redesign of the parking lot, because there's only so many ways the cars can go on Hugo Street from the parking lot, I think that is that was a good first step. But yeah, these small things can definitely make a difference.
Okay, so from that I went on and I looked at speed zones and such things like that around the school, and basically the results I came out with were kind of obvious but shocking at the same time. So it's actually children are eight times more likely to get fatally injured or even killed at 30 miles per hour than they are at 20 miles per hour. So that's a big shocking number, 8 times. But then I went and I was like, hang on a second, so how are you going to fund this? So I went and had a look at the type of fines there are around school zones and such. So I came out with these and I found them online, I believe on one of New York's government websites. It had a study and such. And it said for 10 miles and under it was $60 to $200 fine. For greater than 10 but less than 30, it was $120 to $400 and 15 or 15 days in jail, or even both. And for 30 miles per hour, it's $240 to $800, and 30 days in jail, or it could be 30 days in jail. So there's a big difference between the amount of money and the speed you're currently going. If you're going a slow speed, then people actually start to abide by the speed limits, because right now there's a speed limit out there, but people don't actually abide by it. And as he said, if you put up signs, then it might encourage more people to actually realise it's a school and slow down. I also looked at the limit. So the lowest speed limit that is allowed in New York State, I believe in school zone, is 15 miles per hour. But it can also extend for 1,325 feet away from the school. So that's about a quarter of a mile. And if you put that in Ithaca High School, that would extend to about Lincoln Street. So it's quite a big deal. You could reach quite far with it, and you'd slow a lot of traffic, thus saving a lot more kids and accidents from that. So I think that pretty much concludes this, does it?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity of letting us speak. Yeah, if you have any questions on it.
Yeah, on the back on Lake Street, they have the flashing lights from Boynton on. Did you look into that? Because as a driver, I'm aware of that. And
Well,
going
Right, well, the question of why there is a
Yeah.
school zone on Lake
one
Street by
side and
Boynton.
not-
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I think more, especially high school students, when we drive to school, we all come up Hugo Street instead of going down the back. So like that just makes some sense to us to actually put. I mean, if you were to pick one, we would put it on Hugo Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know.
We've had that conversation with the city of Ithaca. They've explained to us that they can't put a school zone sign there. I mean, is that?
On Cuba Street?
Yeah. They said they've said it's regulations, something, I don't know. But, any other questions for the gentleman?
Did you talk with the city planning office at all?
We did. I think we have. So like, this isn't all of us. A couple of us I think went down there and spoke. Trying to get the word across to everyone.
and no report back what they said to you.
I'm actually not sure, but yeah, I think hopefully they had some impact.
Good.
Those two are still laws at City Hall.
Yeah, right.
Gentlemen, thank you. You get an A.
Hopefully.
From the board president, I mean, come on. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Good work. Thank you. Thank you.
And Pat Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. First thing I want to do is read an email that came from Mike Torelli, who is the Fairport boys lacrosse coach. It is a team that the Ithaca boys lacrosse coach defeated last Wednesday night in their run for the final game for the state championship. And this was sent to the coaches of that team. Mr. Torelli writes, I want to drop you both a quick note to say good luck on Saturday. Bring it back to upstate. I also want to tell you both what a class act you both are. Your guys run an outstanding program that is class from top to bottom. Please pass on to your team how impressed I am with them as kids. Their athleticism and their lacrosse skills speak for themselves, but the most impressive thing about your team is how classy they act. Best of luck on Saturday, and I'll be pulling for you guys. Thank you, Mike Torelli.
That was nice.
So I just want to pass that back along to you, that they're not only really good, they're really classy. And we were all very proud of their accomplishments, making it to the state finals, even though they didn't win, they played a heck of a game. My other remarks about the hearing for New York's Charter School, I want to thank the district for conducting that hearing. I'm encouraging everyone to write. Comments are due tomorrow, emailed to the district clerk, so Kara's receiving those. They'll be forwarded to the CSI, and many, many people are writing from this district and surrounding districts, and I hope that we continue to bring transparency and information to this process so that we can all talk and think about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. That was everyone that was signed up. Anyone else that wishes to speak? Speak now. If not, we'll move on. And we are on to student reps, and Andrew is here. So Andrew.
Okay. So last 2 Saturdays ago, I guess, June 2nd, Catskill Boat Club teamed up with the Ithaca chapter of Habitat for Humanity to put on Rope for Humanity. We rowed 1 million meters, which is a lot, and we raised $12,000 for the 2 clubs.
Wow. $12,000.
Last week was senior week, kicking off Monday morning with a senior breakfast in H Courtyard. Tuesday was a kickball match. Wednesday we had our senior trip where we went to Seneca Park and had a dinner cruise on Seneca Lake, which was very nice. Thursday we had senior awards with a great showing of a lot of different community members and different awards for our students at the high school. Friday was field day, which was, again, really well organized, great music, a lot of fun. This week is the beginning of exams week. I guess it's 2 days in, but mine are all done.
Congratulations, Ed.
So, WISE, which is a senior English class, it's the individualized senior experience, has been, we're doing presentations. We started 2 weeks ago, I think, and they're running through this week. Seniors have been doing their own projects, everything from running to baking to writing. The presentations, like I said, are this week. If you want to attend them, they're public. You can you can search IHS WISE, and then there's a calendar of all the different presentations. Friday, there's prom from 7 to 11 at the Statler with a performance by Thousands of One, so that's probably going to be a lot of fun. And for another one of my student project classes, which is engineering design and development, we have 4 groups presenting 4 completely different engineering projects on Thursday from 5 to 6:30 over in E-Building. There's a bike that is works on water, the electrothon car, a propane-powered dune buggy, and a pitching machine, a pitching and catching machine. So our final projects are, the poster session is our final project for the class.
Great, Andrew. Board responses, I guess, at this point. Anyone?
Yes.
I think the bicycle on water.
What day is that again, Andrew?
It's Thursday.
Thursday.
5 to 6:30.
Anything else for Andrew? Andrew, you are a senior, yes? So congratulations, Andrew. You're finished up, finals, yes? What's next? Cornell. Very good. Congratulations, Andrew. We appreciate
with that, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm familiar with paying for it. I'm not familiar at all with the curriculum. But Andrew, we appreciate your service on the board, and by Andrew, please thank the other reps from Ithaca High School. Did a great job. Thanks for all your other activities that you're involved with, and
your smile.
And right, and there you go. Judy Maxwell was making everyone smile at the commendation ceremony. It was that hugging. It really was getting out of control after a while. So thank you, Andrew. Anything else? Board responses at this point? I will only go ahead, Jay.
Was the group that spoke to us? Do you have any context to that? Was that a class project that we were?
Government class.
It was for their participation in government.
Thank you.
And
They did a good job.
And the point was, point I did allude to during the Take Back the Bridge morning, there were council members there, and I was asking, this is an obvious school zone. Why is Cuga Street not a school zone? And they said, well, it's state regs. And I said, well, this
Parents
is
told you that, right?
no. This is common council members. They were there.
Well,
And it's not like Ithaca Street is Route 34 yet, or what state route is it that you can't have a school zone? It seems really, counterintuitive. And the kids mentioned, the guys mentioned, the safety factor in front of the high school is a critical concern. So that was the source of my comment.
Sure. I wonder if now is not time to revisit that same conversation or to get I'd like to get clarification from their legal counsel, let alone our hearing, about what the requirements are. So I don't know if we want to make that an official, request to have this conversation, if we want to do it through facilities committee or whatever. Sure.
Yeah, please do. And speaking of facilities, I'll just bring it up now. I would really like to thank everyone that showed up for the Enfield playground build on Saturday. My back still hurts, but it's okay. It was a great day. I would really like to thank the staff, Susan. We were reviewing with Judy Blood. All the teachers from every level were there at least sometime during that day, but had put in a lot of effort prior to that build on Saturday. It's really tremendous structure. It is interesting how these playground builds work. The leader of the construction from Architects, takes a look at you and gives you a job suitable to your talents. So I dug holes all day. So
I shoveled gravel, so yeah, our skill levels were shown.
So thank Brad Granger was there also, and it was they were somewhat concerned in Enfield about being way out there and not being able to get the number of volunteers. There were people there from all over the community, East Hill, West Hill, so I appreciate that.
And for those who missed it, there's another opportunity this weekend.
Bell Sherman Annex.
Thank you. The Bell Sherman Annex. You have the chance, if you didn't volunteer this weekend, you can get right up there and help dig holes again.
Exactly, another great weekend.
Yeah.
And there will be builds in the fall. At Northeast is going to be a big one, and there's another one, South Hill, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's the latest updates on, I didn't get to put anything together, just dug holes, so it was great. So we'll move on. So consent agenda, if no one else has anything.
I'll move the consent.
Second.
Any questions? Comments?
The bond thing's not in there, is it?
It's down
That's
below.
separate.
Very good.
Without objection, all in favor? That's everyone, so we'll move on. And Dr. Brown, I believe.
Sure, thank you. Just a couple of acknowledgments and announcements. We have many celebrations and graduations and ceremonies that are happening over the next couple of weeks, and I wish to remind the board about a few. And I'm going to ask the board to do some things that I have to do every day, try to be in two places at one time as I read through these things. On Tuesday, June 19th, the LACS moving up ceremony will be at 5 p.m. in Culp, correct?
Right.
The Bruncheon moving up ceremony will be held in Culp also at 6:30 p.m. So 5 and 6:30, there'll be ceremonies on Tuesday, June 19th. Wednesday, June 20th, we'll have the LACS commencement, not the middle school one, but the other one, the graduation ceremony, commencement at Culp at 6 p.m. The DeWitt moving up ceremony will be held at DeWitt at 7 p.m. So 6 p.m. at Culp for the LACS commencement.
This is the 19th?
That's the 20th, which will take a few hours. And then the DeWitt one will be happening at DeWitt Middle School at 7 p.m.
Can I repeat all that so I make sure I got it right?
Let me get the last one out,
Okay.
then we'll get them all again.
All right.
And then Thursday, the 21st, the IHS commencement will be held this year at Ithaca College in their new facility. And that will begin at 7 p.m. So Tuesday the 19th, what do you have here?
I have Tuesday, June 19th, the LACS moving up ceremony at 5 p.m. in Culp. The Boynton moving up ceremony at 6:30 in Culp.
Yeah.
June 20th, LACS graduation at Culp at 6 p.m. DeWitt moving up at DeWitt at 6 p.m. Correct?
Yeah.
6 and 6?
6 and 7. DeWitt's at 7.
DeWitt at 7, sorry.
Yeah, do it.
Before we move on, Kira, I don't know what you did to my phone today, but some of the things showed up and said, "Would you accept this invitation from Kira?" If you can keep putting those on my calendar, that's amazing. Just keep doing that. Does that make any sense? Can you put those?
I just wish everybody accepted them.
Well, I can't speak to my colleagues. I can speak to how well that worked for me.
Everything's so much easier.
My calendar's not on this device.
No, you can't help it then.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
And IHS commencement at Ithaca College at 7 p.m.
20.
So in addition to these, we'll also send the board the multiple elementary school moving up ceremonies. We have many, BJ, Northeast, Creve Heights, so we'll send you those dates as well. I just want to speak to them now.
I think there's 8 of them, Dr.
There are 8 of them.
And Leslie Myers had?
Just one thing, I apologize. On the 19th, LACS is at LACS.
Yeah.
Because of we figured about the time, we had to shift that.
It's
So,
not at Culp.
sorry. Right.
And that's
LACS,
middle school.
is LACS, and Boynton is at Culp. Okay?
So I just wanted to share that information with the board, and I hope to see you at many of those opportunities to celebrate our achievements. This next piece, the board has been very clear to me to create an excellent organization. And last week I had an opportunity to listen to Dr. Shawn Everly Bradwell give a keynote address at Ithaca College. And I was amazed at how you put everything into the form of a mathematical equation. So since then, when thinking about excellence, I've attempted to put that in the form of somewhat of a math, not as well as you did, Sean, but in my own little way, attempting to put this in a mathematical equation. And what I've come up with is excellence equals achievement. And what I also came up with is excellence does not equal being comfortable, status quo, staying put, doing the same thing. And so this equation has helped me over the last couple of weeks as some colleagues and friends are going to have achieved and will be leaving or be experiencing some change. So I wanted to share with the board tonight some of those names. I mean, you know about many of these. We have Ms. Connie Evelyn, who's going to be moving on to be a superintendent in Auburn. Dr. Leslie Myers is going on to be a superintendent in Rockport. And Patrick Jensen is going to be moving on to be superintendent in Southern Cayuga. It's been interesting how many folks are paying attention to what's happening in our school district. So the emails I'm receiving from across the country have been, so what are you doing wrong there, or what are you doing so right there? Another reason why I had to look at the mathematical equation. To have these folks go into superintendencies from our organization, it's big. The particular individuals moving into those superintendencies are going to change the world for us. As we talk about being excellent in world-class status, it wouldn't be good for us to only talk about it being here in Ithaca. What we're doing is so big, and we're changing what's happening for young people all over the country. And as we see colleagues and friends move into other organizations, and they won't be with us every day. I won't have Leslie defining words and helping pronunciate words for me every day anymore. Connie helping me with my outfits. I'm going to struggle with that. But I'm also knowing that these people are going on to places where they're going to be leading the work. And I see that as achievement, which I then equate to excellence. Versus, and this has been tough. We're having multiple transitions here in the organization. There's much change that's happening. But that, from my perspective, is good because that is not equal to excellence. If I'm doing it, if I'm giving this the appropriate mathematical equation there. But again, I just want to recognize that we have some folks moving into some key positions of leadership throughout the state and the country. And having 3 people come from our administrative ranks, which aren't very big, and moving into superintendencies is a recognition of your work and our work as an organization. And I want to congratulate these young people.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
And that's all I have to say.
Quick response to that.
Please do.
I think it's, to Dr. Myers and Ms. Evelyn, say publicly, congratulations. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And what I'm excited for is to watch not your careers from afar, but up close and personal, and to watch the ways in which you move different organizations. And I think you're saying spread this work and spread the sort of rigor and excellence we want for young folks across the state. And so, widely deserving congratulations. I'm looking forward to visiting Auburn and Rockport sometime soon.
Okay. I also would like to congratulate. I'm doing it from a female point of view, and I see 2 females. And I see number 4 and number 5.
Well,
You're having a joke.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up, and but I'll only add, Leslie, probably when I first was on the board, I think 5 years ago, I think one of the first interviews I sat in on was your position, and so it's been it's really the start of really, I think, transforming this administration and the district to hopefully where we eventually want to be. And as we said privately, congratulations, and Connie as well. As I'm looking at Connie, we've had to talk, but this big new challenges, great rewards, but I guess that the work is huge and it starts soon. Yeah, so go get them. So thank you all, and we'll move on, Dr. Brown? Okay. And on to school district business, and if it has anything to do with policy, it has to do with the policy committee, and so I think we're going to wade into policies.
We are, and we'll be as efficient as possible. Let me do a couple of setup things and then proceed from there. One of the reasons why we have these conversations about policies, it helps for the board to have a conversation about the philosophy and ideology of how we move forward. And so when we have these conversations about policies, we're really talking about what we think is in the best interest of young folks and how to move things. And how to move things forward, and that conversation is oftentimes the most fruitful. So what we're going to try to do today is to save any of the grammatical edits, errors, suggestions, things of that nature, and forward those directly for Kira, and to maximize our time together to talk about the more substantial issues that arise through policy. As the board knows, and I'm trying to inform our home audience as well, every year the board's required to go through a review of its annual code of conduct. And in doing so, it's an opportunity for us to revise a whole host of policies. So momentarily, I'm going to bring Dr. Myers up, and then some other folks as well, to walk us through these to get a sample of what's taking place. For this evening, we're going to focus on 4 different things, and I'm asking the board to read the code of conduct. There are different applications of it. Dr. Myers will come and talk about it momentarily, but that's roughly about 300 pages of text, right? So you can read that at your leisure and send your comments to Kira. Most importantly is the Dignity for All Students Act, DASA, which you all have been talking about. We'll spend some time about that this evening. A new concussion policy, particularly giving the wide attention nationally on concussions, but also what's taking place in our district that's going to be passed. An acceptable use policy for technology, and then an attendance regulation, in particular to help the high school achieve some of its goals of excellence. And so those will be some of the philosophical things we'll talk about today in terms of what we're trying to do. And then we'll take care of the nuts and bolts stuff via email during policy committee or whatever the case may be. So we'll give Dr. Myers, 5-10 minutes to talk to us about the DASA Act. And all these documents are in the Dropbox. Kira's been great at keeping these updated, edited, etc. And so for the next little bit, I'll pass it off to Dr. Myers, and we'll go from there.
Sure. I spoke before the board several months ago to talk to you about the fact that we have the Dignity for All Students Act that would be going into effect July 1st, 2012. And so this process really began officially in late January, early February, where we had about 25 different stakeholders coming together that represented the different viewpoints in our district and the community as it relates to bullying, harassment, discrimination, hazing. And so not only did we have internal staff and administrators working on this, but we had community members, including parents and students, as well as law enforcement, attorneys, we had coaches, phys ed teachers, etc. And so it was an opportunity for us to not only fulfill what the mandates are in Dignity for All Students, which is policy, training, and the identification of a Dignity for All Students coordinator in each one of our 12 schools, but we went way beyond that to ensure really our students were taken care of and were in an environment that was safe, because that's really the context of that law, is to create an environment that's safe for students so they can learn. So from February until last month, this ad hoc committee met either in its entirety of 25 individuals or in one of 3 subgroups, which included policy, which you have the policy 115 and regulation 115R. We also had a public relations, communications, marketing about getting the word out about the policy to the various stakeholder groups and constituents. And then we had a 3rd group that worked on training. How are we going to educate our administrators, our teachers, all of our educators in the district, and then go beyond that to make sure that families were educated and our students. And so what you have in front of you are the artifacts of the work. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the immense work that the committee did. I mean, everyone really collaborated and worked together. People did their homework outside. Everyone came back prepared. We had 3 meetings, and then we had a final meeting, and it was amazing work. So what you have before you represents the collective experience, wisdom, knowledge base of a variety of stakeholders. So that's really it in a nutshell.
And a quick addition to that, if I could,
Sure.
Dr. Myers is working not only with this committee, but also trying to figure out with the state. We've had conversations about the board about quote-unquote unfunded mandates, and this seems to be a mandate from the state that also requires significant resources that are going to be marshaled. And so when we were asking NISBA and other folks for boilerplate language, what we're finding was we were actually writing the boilerplate, right? Or Dr. Myers and the committee was writing the boilerplate. So one of the interesting things about DASA is no one really knows how to write this policy effectively. And we seem to be one of the folks out in front, especially when you're going out to conferences and going out to other folks. They're asking you, can you share that with us again? So what you see here is not only the best collective wisdom of a bunch of folks, but also seems to be some of the best thinking that's out there currently about this act and how to put it into effect.
Right, once we get through tonight, I have an email that I need to send out to a lot of people saying we want your stuff. And all I said is just give us credit for it, because it was a lot of work.
Question, Leslie. Dr. Brown has alluded to this before in his presentations. One of the reasons we're positioned to help young people the way we are now is because of some of the work you undertook years ago. And so kudos again for that. So you have been in the trenches regarding these issues. You've helped hire our anti-bias person who had some significant role in that. You've lived with us through the directives associated with attorney. Is DASA, from your perspective so far, a logical conclusion? Is the state moving us someplace that makes sense, giving all the individual attempts at this apple that we've taken in the last few years?
Yes, because it really forces schools to pay attention. And you know, the big piece of this is that the creation of a safe environment. We haven't really had to talk about that. You know, a lot of districts have that in their mission, in their vision, or in their priorities. But this really forces us to create a culture that does just that, and that's collaborating and working together. So it's a lot of information and a lot of work that had to be put together very quickly. But what I like about Dignity for All Students is that it's going to change the culture. It's going to change the conversations, and it's going to change the way that it's going to force us to change the way that in some instances that we interact with children.
I think it's an attempt for us to be proactive. I think the concern I keep hearing from teachers, as we know with any policy, is the translation from paper to practice. And particularly given the forms of bullying and harassment that seem the most prevalent or the most difficult for most teachers to identify, right? So, because it's digital, it's social. And so if you're not clued into that web page or to that network or that text message, it's much harder than the classroom interactions, the hallway interactions that we're most familiar with. At least that's what I'm hearing from teachers. And the state has not yet, or most folks not yet, has defined significant training to help teachers really negotiate those spaces. And it also starts raising questions about what is school space and what is home space, right? So I think it has a lot of work. It is a proactive step, but I think it'll be as good as we make it.
Right. Just a few things I'll add. We were very conscientious in, as we talk about culture shifting, is to include the language of being an upstander. From our students to the adults who work in each one of our schools, in the buildings, you know, including transportation as well as our community. And being an upstander means that when you see any type of bullying behavior, harassment, hazing, discrimination, that you just don't idly sit by because silence speaks volumes, that you are going to do something about it, that you are going to intervene. And so the charge for us as a district over next year and the years to come is to create that culture. Because when I have been talking with students, at least at the secondary level, the big piece that they've said is, you know, we get that that's so important, but this concept of being a snitch, and that's the language, is that if I say something, it somehow is going to draw the attention to me. And that, you know, even though I want to do the right thing, then I somehow fall out of grace, or I'm going to begin to be bullied, picked on, harassed. So we have that charge of really making sure that our students we're creating upstanders in our students, and that we as adults are modeling that behavior. And that when we see it, when we see a shove, when we see a, you know, that's so gay, or, you know, using slanderous language, that we address it and we nip it right then and there, that we capitalize on teachable moments with young people and adults.
Go ahead.
To Sean's point that he just made, in the sessions I've sat in, about 3 of them last year were folks from the district were trying to discuss with parents how all the social media drama bleeds into school day. The issue is still what's stronger than sketchy. As a district, we have no authority, we have no right, we have no access to children's Facebook pages, right? So is there, I'm reaching, but is there anything that you've seen or heard or come up with that will allow our folks in the high school in particular to be anything other than reactive regarding all of the nonsense that is bleeding into the school day?
Well, let me answer that on two levels. We do have, even though as administrators or educators we don't have access to it, the students do, and the parents and caregivers do. And this goes back to that concept of being an upstander. You can take a screenshot on your iPad as long as you have the information on the screen. You can take a picture of that, and that has been brought in to the administrators where they can see if, say, on a Facebook status update and then a thread, there's bullying or harassing behavior. So we do have some access if folks are willing to come forward with that. But again, we have to change the culture where we have to incorporate more character education and more really kindness and caring about one another, because that's where you cut it off, is when people are civil and they are appropriate with one another.
I'm sure when our high school folks, I'm sure they can add to this as well. What I can say is, one, I know teachers are also friends with students, right? Facebook friends. And so we have faculty and staff who have access to their Facebook pages. And there have been other districts, I'm not sure if they're New York State, but there have been other districts who have suspended students for posting negative things about teachers on Facebook, and the courts have upheld the suspension. So it may not be they control what takes place on Facebook, but they've upheld the suspension if they're saying negative things about teachers on their Facebook page. I don't know what that means for New York State law, and I'll have to figure out what state that was. But it raises a whole other set of circumstances that public schools have not had to engage before, right? And now we find ourselves in this engagement. So in your Dropbox, you have two things. You have policy 1115, which is the policy, and you have 1115R, which is the regulation. If you have questions about that or just questions about DASA, we can either do them now or you can defer to Dr. Myers and the committee afterwards.
Andrew, go ahead.
Just something at the high school, a resource. There's Link Crew, which is about 100 juniors and seniors who work with the freshmen on a group of about 10 starting orientation day. That'd be a great group to get to start with the culture shift, because they're a lot of students who don't like that kind of thing, who are actively against bullying and are just not really sure what to do about it.
Thank you.
Andrew, what was it called? What crew?
Link Crew.
Link?
L-I-N-K. I point out another thing. We're working on a group with Celia now called the Allies, in which we're trying to get a group of kids together. It's going to be student-driven. We met with about 8 or 10 kids today. We're going to be with another group next Monday. And what we're trying to do is build common language around students and adults who witness incidents. So the innovation there is to have it student-driven and not top-down.
But also it's reinforcing being an upstander and addressing the behavior.
Great.
Just one question. I don't want to get into the policy too much, but can you just speak to the role of the bullying prevention coordinator at each school? That's a part of DASA. That's, you know, we went there with our bias prevention officer and pushing down bullying, anti-bullying, and bias prevention right down to the school level. So DASA is consistent with what the vision was anyway.
Correct.
You wanted to speak to what that role is?
What the role of
And the final name that we've decided on?
It's bullying prevention coordinator, right? It will fulfill the DASA coordinator, but we don't have that common language established yet. If we posted it to the website and said DASA coordinator, or Dignity for All Students, a lot of people still don't know what that is. We haven't saturated the market yet. So the bullying prevention coordinator would be very well versed, obviously, on the policy. They would have to know that. We have a form that we've created that is that identifies the procedure from when suspected bullying, harassment occurs. So they're well versed with that procedure, and they are expected to turnkey train that information. They're a resource in the building, so students can go to that particular individual. And they also have to be board approved, so we'll have to bring forward to the board 12 or more names that have to be vetted by you all
On an annual basis.
On an annual basis, they have to be approved. And we have to make publicly known the names of those individuals on our website, not only our district website, but on each school website.
See, Sean, we actually read the policies once in a while. But obviously that's an important piece.
Yes.
Right, I mean, and it can be, obviously can be a teacher, it can be an administrator, it's really, but it is staff within the building.
And it's going to cost us money because it will be stipend related.
That was probably my other question. How is it 0.2? Is it, we don't, it's 0.1. I mean, I don't know what we're looking at is the compensation for being the bullying prevention coordinator.
Well, we actually had a conversation during administrative team, and even though we're working to be more restorative in nature as far as our response, a lot of this is going to be punitive initially. And so the Dignity for All Students coordinator, the point person, will be an administrator at the elementary and secondary level. So there wouldn't be and that's a regular part of what they do. What we have to monitor, however, and we had this conversation during admin team, is that very naturally the incidents of reporting are going to spike. So we may need some assistance, we may need some relief, or to call in some individuals to help out the administrators. But it just logically made sense with the legal aspects, embedded within the law, as well as just the response that's going to occur. It made just very natural sense for it to be an administrator.
All right, thanks for the clarity.
Does that mean principal?
No, it could be principal or associate principal.
Okay, one or the other, yeah.
Elder had a question.
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I have to ask it. A lot of the stuff DASA contemplates dealing with, I'm sure, is going to be happening as soon as the kids get on the bus. Does the policy, does the language, does the training of bus drivers, are we contemplating all this stuff the minute the kids step on that bus?
At our last administrative team meeting, Margaret and myself, Mr. Ellis was involved in an emergency. We actually had that conversation about appropriately identifying it. So we've begun to identify a priority list, and bus drivers are up there as far as being trained and being appropriately aware of how to help be upstanders and respond.
Chris, go ahead.
And I don't want you to go into too much detail, so what's the extent of the training for these building individuals?
Well, again, it goes initially, we're going to do it in stages. They have to be aware of what our, if you've read the policy, just knowing the definitions. When we say bullying, this is what we mean. When we say hazing, etc. They'll have to know the process of when a particular incident comes, how do you take it from beginning to end, and then what's the follow-up with the families.
So I guess what I was asking is, how are we bringing them? Are you going through this information with them? How are they being trained? How are they reviewing it? Is it instructor-led? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're having some workshop, and we're also doing some online training as well, some refresher. If you remember, they used to have the books that you create your own story at the end. They take you to a certain point. So we're going to create some video clips of particular incidents, like a student walking down the hallway and being shoved into the locker or tripped. And then, we'll stop it. We'll have guiding questions. If you were the student watching that incident, what should you do or what could you do? If you were the student being bullied, what would you do? Is this actually bullying? So we're going to hit it through a variety of venues so people can be trained and can practice the skills of proper identification.
Has that movie been part of, has a movie bully been part of the conversation?
Part of the conversations, yeah.
Absolutely. Celia Clement, who was the co-facilitator of that 25 stakeholder group, she actually facilitated a discussion after the movie a few weeks ago. And so we are going to continue that process. We obviously would need to solicit permission from parents. for them the students to view. But as soon as, we're hoping that it's going to come out on DVD, we're not sure yet, but that is definitely a part of our training included in the repertoire.
And I know a number of our local community organizations who work with young folks also had
GX
special
sponsored it.
screenings to work on that as well. So this is the first reading of the DASA Act, both the regulation and the act. And so we should move on, and we'll be back on the next board agenda, so we can, if there's an additional conversation, you read more, and you have questions, by all means, you can email them where we can deal with those then. Does that make sense? Great. Code of conduct.
And just before we move on, we're talking about first reading. Have we moved these? Are we going to do it all together? How are we going to?
Rob, I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm sure someone will email me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. Every time I try to get clarification about what's the best practice, we are actually not required by law to do a first or a second reading. And so we can literally take no action at all and still vote on them the following meeting. Sometimes it can be postponed. I know at one point in time we were tabling them.
Yeah.
I can't get clarity, even when I asked NISBA what should take place, and so I'm confused. I'm not going to lie to you. We can do whatever we want to do.
That's fine.
We did that.
Say it again?
We did that anyway.
Do what? Do what we want to do. Let me rephrase that. We should do what we should. Yes, exactly. What's appropriate?
It's always been an onerous process, but so I'm fine.
Just so folks know, the two reading is a local decision, right? We put that in place to protect. We said 3, right, and then we've gone down to 2. But we could literally pass a policy the first night if we wanted to. It's just probably not wise.
Exactly. So thanks, Sean. Go ahead.
So code of conduct?
Please.
Yes.
Code of conduct, I'll keep short and simple. We have a study guide for you, an outline. It's a front and back page that's in Dropbox that outlines the major changes, the topic, and the things that were changed, the corresponding page number for plain length, or for detailed procedures, which is what the administrators use because it has everything, and that's an alphabetic orientation. And then the shift this year is that we have an elementary code of behavior expectations for pre-K through 5, and then we have a secondary student conduct manual for 6th through 12th grade. And so all of the modifications that were made were listed. We can certainly make this available on the website if the public wants to look at that. But that's really it in a nutshell. You can see all the major changes that are included. It's outlined, pretty detailed, and this is your study guide to maneuver you through these 3 documents. And the other major changes is that in the elementary and secondary, we included photos of our students. So you'll see students, we're going to notify once they're approved, the families of the students on the front cover so that they know their children are on there. And we'll send these to the printer, and they will be available electronically on July 1st. And then they will be available hard copy later on in the summer and mailed to families appropriately.
And Leslie, certainly, if there's an offer to put information on the website, please do so. I mean, once we get it out.
Sure.
We appreciate that.
My only caveat I pull out for the code of conduct that we added that we didn't put a corresponding policy to yet, but we will at some point in time when the policy review comes up, is that we added an insert about requiring students to wear seatbelts on the bus. That was in conversation with Jim Ellis.
Right.
And so in the code of conduct, so in other words, it's in the code of conduct, but there hasn't been an official board-approved policy about seatbelt use or safety belt use on school buses. We're still working on drafting the actual policy, but we didn't want to wait to get into the code of conduct.
Okay.
Good.
Kara, that is in there, should I assume, right, the seatbelt insert?
In Dropbox right now?
No, it's in the code of conduct, but did you get the seatbelt insert in?
I can't remember, Sean. I can check it out right now.
No, we'll take a look at it.
It's a big document. It's, to recall everything in it is a small
conversation. Other conversations there? Fantastic. Questions, comments, etc. Write to Dr. Myers, Akira, and good luck reading the code of conduct. Enjoy it.
You may want to involve Sean in that mix.
Dr. Everson Bradwell in that? Comments, feedback?
Oh, please, sure, by all means.
Yeah, I think we might want to include. Unless Sean is going to become a superintendent somewhere in the next few weeks, maybe we ought to.
Tempting as it may be.
Maybe we ought to keep Sean in the loop.
I did want to say also with the code of conduct, the elementary, the secondary, and the detailed, we had an ad hoc committee that worked on it. Each one of the 12 schools solicited feedback from 2 to 3 different stakeholder groups. We received feedback from the community, parents and caregivers, and then we had experts in particular areas review that. So lots of folks gave us feedback about this.
Including a 4-hour policy committee meeting
Yes.
to wordsmith every
Yes.
page of
Yes.
all the codes of conduct. So this has gone through a couple of vettings.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, we probably should.
Oh, yes. For the first time, we have an elementary code of behavior expectations, and Erling Carr, who's a retired administrator, was very instrumental in creating that. So I'd be remiss if I didn't thank her.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Myers. Fantastic. Concussion policy, can I?
So there's been a request that maybe the attendance regulation could go, it sort of fits in, and is that okay that we change the order or no?
For
Breaking the
Code
rule.
of conduct?
Attendance regulation?
Oh, we're fine.
By all means. And this was a late addition, my apologies, we've been working through it. It's,
Thank you, Leslie.
this comes at the request, well, I'll let Jarrett set up in a second, but let me just say, and talking to this, but here's the way in which we envision this, so folks at LACS in the middle schools also understand what's taking place as well. The board has an official district-wide attendance policy, and having conversations, some of the specificity that the high school needed wasn't captured by the board policy. So I think that we'd include a regulation. The way in which it's currently written, it says high school attendance regulation. Our expectation is that ACS could also have their own LACS attendance regulation, that DeWitt would have its own, or could have its own, Boynton, etc. And the way in which we would do these, I'm forgetting what the number is now, that's lead me, what's the number for?
5100R.1.
Right, so it would be R.1, ACS would be R.2, etc. You all don't care about that level of detail, but that's the idea. Go ahead, Chris.
Why would we have different levels between high schools and middle schools and elementary? Should we be consistent?
Yes, without question, every attendance regulation will be consistent within the ICSD policy. But in terms of the specifics of resources and strategies of success, how we're going to try to encourage and better attendance, those we are finding should be district building specific. So for example, the high school is saying for senior privileges, any student with a goal is 75. Well, for ACS, there is no grade, so how would that even apply? They don't even have senior privileges in that way. So how do we then measure those sort of, the high school, as we jokingly say, is 100 doors, right? How do you account for cutting at a building that's 100 doors as opposed to the middle schools where that's not really a concern? And so we're trying to figure out how to be age appropriate and building specific. That was the idea. So Jared, why don't you go ahead?
Sure, so thank you for inviting me to talk about this evening. What we're trying to do, this is not as much an attendance policy as it is a cutting policy or cutting regulation. Our issue lies in the fact that students come to school and then through one of those 122 doors leave. And they kind of selectively attend certain classes over others. What we, and the administrative team is all here this evening, what we have attempted to do over the course of this year is to build really systematic interventions into our after-school day and during our school day. So students can access tutors from Cornell, tutors from IC. Really, we've kind of built an after-school intervention system that allows students to access a lot more curricular material than they have in years past. What we're uncovering is that if you cut class, the odds of you being successful in class is pretty slim. So what this policy or regulation, I'm going to say regulation, not policy, attempts to do is to say if you cut 6 classes in a marking period, we're going to assign you some sort of project to get caught up in the class that you're missing. It could be meeting with the teacher, kind of before school, after school, during the lunch period. It could mean doing some sort of meeting with a tutor through the different community agencies that we partner with. But something that says, what we do is important and you've missed it and we need to make sure you know this content. That we think will help us close some of the demonstrable gaps that we have in terms of our graduation rates, in terms of varying achievement rates inside the building, and really hold us accountable for kids who are cutting. Currently, in the 11-12 school year, we have 1.5 attendance clerks, a little over 1,400 students in the building. It's hard to reconcile all of that and keep track in a meaningful and intelligent way. Next year, in the budget that we proposed and presented to you, we have doubled the number of attendance clerks in the building from 1.5 to 3. And the hope is that with 3 full-time people, we can accurately reconcile the attendance, keep more accurate data about who is where, and then with the addition of our graduation coaches, really go after attendance in a way that says what we do is important, we want you to be successful, and we're going to hold you accountable for completing the work. So the way the regulation is written has nothing to do with full day absences. If you're sick, you're sick. If you're taking an AP test, you're taking an AP test. If you're meeting with your school counselor, you're meeting with your school counselor. If you're on a music lesson, field trip, field trip. None of that is what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you came to school, you missed, for some unknown reason, 4th period. You weren't at an assigned, school-approved, school-sanctioned spot, and you did that 3 times. At the 3rd time, we're going to call your families and our resources together and kind of develop a plan. If it happens 6 times, you're going to get an assignment that you have to complete. If you complete that assignment, you will get the grade that you earned in the class. If you don't complete that assignment, you're going to get a U, and that U says what you did is unacceptable, and hopefully that U will turn to a 55. And so we're going after cutting and class skipping. And we're trying to make it clear, and we'll do a pretty aggressive advertising campaign with our students in the fall, that we're not going to tolerate cutting at Ithaca High School. And you won't.
Jared, that point right there is the key point I think the board is going to have to pay attention to, right? That the idea being after 6 cuts,
Right.
a student would
In
get
the
a
same
U.
class.
A student would get a U on their transcript or on their report card,
Right, for the mark.
and if the project is not completed, the U turns into a 55 or in essence an F. Right, so I want the board to be clear about what that process is, because we know, no matter how much we debate it and say it may be a good practice and rationality, that when it starts being employed, there's going to be conversations and questions about the policy.
Is this, 2 questions. Is it 6 cuts over a particular span of time?
In one marking period in the same class.
No marking period, the same class. Okay, so I wasn't the best student in math, but I know now that I can cut 5 times in each class and nobody would say anything to me.
That's not true. At the 3rd, we're having your family come in, and you're getting nightly phone calls from the 3 attendance clerks that we have. The graduation coach is following up. The APs are still issuing consequences for cutting class. So that's not true. There actually be a lot
What's
done.
a consequence for cutting class?
Could be an after-school detention. It could be a lunch detention. It could be a conference and sit down. What happened? Is it some sort of a crisis that took place between you and your friends where you just couldn't go to class because you couldn't focus, and we need to figure out and get you with a social worker or a school psychologist or a school counselor? So there are a myriad of interventions that we would do before we got to the 6th cut.
Compared to now, Jared,
Now you can cut 25 or 30 times, and if you get caught, you get caught. The teacher writes the referral. If the 1.5 attendance clerks are able to reconcile everything kind of coherently, you might get a robocall home. The attendance record may or may not be accurate. This is a far more systematic way of approaching attendance. Also, when you look at the new APPR regulations that are coming for teachers, teachers are going to be evaluated based on student performance. So our students perform, they need to be in class, and we need to have accountability to support our teachers as well.
I think it was important to make that point. Go ahead, Jim.
Do we have the systems to do this?
Yeah. Next year we have the systems. Currently, in 11-12, we do not. In 12-13, we will. That's not to say there won't be hiccups. That's not to say as you learn to walk, you're not going to fall. But we're going to certainly make an earnest effort.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but part of what you're saying is not just the systems, but the sort of policy infrastructure in place as well, to be able to say to students, this is the policy now, right? So, because right now it's sort of loose and flexible, and there's no real clarity, right? But here it is, and as long as we're very aggressive in the beginning of the school year, letting folks know what the consequences are, to be very proactive about it, we're hoping that it'll also shift the culture as well.
There's a difference between encouraging students to be in class rather as opposed to expecting them to be there. Andrew, go ahead.
Are you gonna watch for teachers that don't take attendance regularly?
Right. So one of the other things that kind of comes to this is, right now there's no real need, right, to have clean attendance data because there's no actual impact for not having real attendance data. So this raises the level of accountability for everyone in the building, from the administration, the teachers, to the students, because what we do at school is important, and we want you there.
So teachers are gonna, some teachers
It'll be
have not been taking attendance.
accurate attendance consistently.
And so you've got to educate the students and the teachers, and you're gonna have an extra clerk and a half that you haven't had.
And an additional graduation coach.
A school-wide initiative. Other Other questions, Chris?
I just, and maybe I'm alone in this, the beauty in this to actually take action. And because if the kids are not in class, they will not learn, they will underperform, and we'll be looking at graduation rates that are abysmal and different things, and we'll get frustrated and finger pointing. We're putting things in place that not only get you in class, but get you support. So if, you know, kids cut school for all reasons, I cut class because I had a girlfriend or whatever. But some kids cut class because they don't feel they can do the work in that particular class. And they are embarrassed to say, I need help. Or they don't even know the help is available. So not only are we saying, which is what we expect to be in class, but here are the resources. So, you know, this is so thought out that I'm really impressed by this.
If I can add, I think that partly why the regulation says in terms of how to fix the strategies for success, right? Because we're understanding that there's an inherent connection between student achievement and attendance, and also the ways in which we want each school to be able to say what's going to work for your building, right? Because I think as the policy committee, we said we need to know what you all need, and Jarrett and the administration team coming saying, look, if you really want us to take care of this, we need a policy with some teeth that actually makes this happen. And so the policy committee did not write this regulation. The high school admin team wrote the regulation, and so this is their project, and we're hoping that as a board we can support that. I mean, in particular, support it not just today, but support it next year when we really have to support it.
What else?
Some students cut because they'll tell you they're seeing boring classes in boring ways, learning boring crap. So, and I like the fact that this is being synergistic with the plan to make sure that things are happening to alleviate the condition I just referred to. And we've had a couple of parents, at least I've had a couple of parents tell me, you won't support my kid being honors math. And yet when they go to honors regents, they fall asleep, right? Because there's nothing in between. And those regents classes are for dummies, right? So there's a component of this that's not on kids, right? So I'm happy to hear that we're going to make them accountable, but I cut because my teachers were teaching here.
So under this policy, if you cut because you are bored, if you look at some of the options that are available, we could assign you an independent research project as a way of making up some seat time, engage you in something that you find far more intellectually stimulating than what we're doing in class. We could do some sort of external research project where you engage with community partners. We can be creative, but the onus is going to be on you. You cut. There's a consequence for cutting daily, and now there's a consequence that if you want to get the grade, you're going to have to do some extra work now because you missed that time.
A shadowing.
And you also cut because you can and you can get away with it.
Yeah.
You know. So we got to change the culture. If you can't get away with it, if there are repercussions, you know, you may take that first or that second or that third time, but when you know there are repercussions and you're being held accountable by 3 attendance folks, that changes the dynamics.
I've seen Samantha waiting there.
Yes, thank you. I would just like the board to also think and consider this, because when we talk about excellence for all, this creates equitable practices for all of our students, because I don't want us to not recognize the fact that we have students in AP classes that are also cutting, but because they're performing, they're able to do it. And where could they be if they attended all of their classes? So I think that this creates an opportunity for us, one, to look at our practices with our educators, create some differentiation, but also say, this isn't just for the kids in Regents classes. This is for everybody.
Right, and I would have to add that I didn't cut because Miss Moresco might find out.
That's right.
So if Miss Moresco found out that I cut, that was not going to be a good thing. So,
I don't cut board meetings because Rob Ainsley doesn't cut
you gotta show up to play. If you don't show up for practice, you don't get to play.
So similar to other questions from board. Sorry.
I just want to say, speaking from a teacher's viewpoint on this, it's very pro-teacher also, in that they will now be backed for reporting accurate. I think previously it was, nothing's going to happen. So now, if something is, I think you'll find cooperation.
And it's also supporting the teachers with the APPR.
Yeah.
And just asking Judy quickly, you know, I'm not saying this policy on our Dropbox right now. It's still editing in process.
Yeah, I don't know. We can probably put it in there for 2 minutes. I'm sure Kara maybe will do it right now, as a matter of fact. So it's there. It's a regulation. It's 2.5 pages long. It's worth to take a quick read and go
I
from
think
there.
the last of it was I sent out and asked everybody if they had any other comments. If not, I would put it in by noon, and
So-
then I got busy.
Yep.
And I,
So we can just drop it.
Yeah, so, but Jarrett's last corrections are in.
Yes, I think our expectation is somehow this would be worked in the student code of conduct for the secondary, right? So take a look at it if you get a chance. And again, we have another 2 weeks before this all goes out to the printer. We'll have another reading, so if you have questions, would you ever see it next week? We'll talk about it at the 26th meeting, right?
Right, but I think the point should be made that whether this policy is in the code of conduct, it will eventually be there. But this is a policy that we would want to hopefully pass next meeting and the June 26th meeting.
All of these.
Because this is not something that wants to drag on into July, et cetera.
Yep,
So
no.
I'm looking, right, we're looking to pass this policy. Read it.
Next meeting.
Give feedback, but expect to pass this policy in some form in 2 weeks, correct?
And this policy, like the other policies, have all gone through a number of various vetting, wordsmithing, et cetera. And I say that not to say that it can't be enhanced or improved, but just to know going in that we've debated word choice here, upstandard words, that, you know, we've done a lot of that internal bickering.
And use of language, again, I said pass this policy, vote on the policy in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Whatever the board wishes to do at that point.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, high school staff.
Yes, indeed. We're almost done here. We're close.
Sean, it's in there now.
Fantastic. Judy, concussion policy, which actually was one of the more informative policies we've discussed in quite some time.
Yeah.
So we've given all the feedback.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the new Concussion Management and Awareness Act that was signed into law last fall, August or September, and goes into effect July 1, 2012. It's to address the possible serious consequences of a concussion and even possible death if people sustain a really significant and serious concussion. That, as you may know, in terms of if people have a concussion, the serious consequences can be if it's not recognized and then they continue to do whatever activity and have a second impact. So because of the serious possibility of serious consequences, this law went into effect, and it starts with districts needing to form a concussion management team, which we've done. Our team was made up of our school physician, athletic trainer, athletic director, school nurse, head nurse, school counselor, school social worker, and high school administrator as well. Next year, when we start to meet, we've met about 4 times this year, and when we start meeting next year, we hope to add a family member, community member, and a student, which I think is a good addition to the committee. So this committee met. We created the policy and the regulation that you all have. And it also, the mandate requires that we post information on the website. So I've met with Kira, and we are starting that process, and hopefully that information will be posted, at least the minimum requirements will be posted on the website, and then we will continue to add and build the website as we find out what other information will be helpful for everyone. Information on the website is going to be in different categories. Certainly it will be available for everyone, but we're going to identify information for students and athletes, families, coaches, athletic trainer, PE teachers, school nurses, and school counselors, administrators, and physicians, community physicians, because they also have a role in what they need to do to support this mandate. It requires education for specified groups, although we're hoping that everybody will look at the information and education. So it requires education and training for coaches, PE teachers, school nurses, athletic trainers, students who participate in interscholastic sports, and their families. And athletes that participate in interscholastic sports have to fill out certain forms that are required to participate, and their parents also have to have read information about concussions, signed that they are aware of this, and that they also take responsibility in reporting if their child presents with any symptoms or if they sustain a concussion. I also want to make sure people understand that this isn't only for students that suffer a concussion or diagnosed that do participate in athletics or even sustain their concussion in school. It's for if you sustain a concussion outside of school as well, that you are going to need to participate and follow these regulations. So I think it's also, just in trying to summarize this for everyone, important to understand that there definitely are specific physical activity limitation requirements. You are to, if you even exhibit any possible symptoms of a concussion, pulled out of physical activity immediately. You need to get a medical evaluation by a licensed New York State physician in order to return to physical activity. You need to be asymptomatic for 24 hours. So there are really serious guidelines that are put into effect to make sure that we are protecting and keeping safe.
Can you talk about our pre-screening baseline?
Yes. So if currently, and I think this is going to expand to all athletes, but currently if you're in a high-risk sport, so football, lacrosse, soccer, then you are given a baseline impact screening, so neurological testing. So all of those students, currently the athletic trainer, will test those athletes and give a baseline screening. And so if there is a suspicion of them having a concussion, then they will be retested and their baseline compared to the subsequent testing to compare. And then when they return to activity, again, they will be given this baseline if they're cleared, just to make sure that in fact they have returned to baseline. When they return, there's a gradual progression to return to activity. If they become symptomatic at any time, then they are again pulled from that activity. So the guidelines are pretty rigid in terms of what we need to do to protect students to make sure there aren't long-term consequences or serious consequences.
And Judy, one of the questions we had, I was wondering if this was just part of the national hype, right? That this is a hot topic around head injuries, concussions, or was this an actual problem in our district? And do you still have the numbers there?
I do. So when I looked at just for the high school, the total number of students that were diagnosed with a concussion this year were 45 students, 25 of those needing academic accommodations. Because part of this is not just the physical activity restriction, but also a part of it that we've learned is students need cognitive rest, that their cognitive function is limited, and that if we tax that, then that actually exacerbates their healing and can just cause more complications. So that is also a part of this.
So that to me was significant, right? 40 students or 45 students in a year from one high school is a number for us to be paying attention to, particularly given we're hearing for some of the long-term consequences for some of our students as well, right?
Right.
Academic modifications, of attendance modifications, things of that nature.
Did you say lacrosse, soccer, and football?
Yes, those are the ones that I'm sure that hockey.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't think I heard hockey. I wanted to.
There could be others that I'm leaving out.
And really, and not to diminish the incidences in other sports that you may not think, oh, you're not wearing a helmet, so you're not going to get a concussion. It can happen really on a basketball court.
Well, in fact, Rob, I think we're finding most of these are happening not even on the athletic field, right in classrooms, someone falling off the back of the chair.
Exactly.
Right. We have had students falling out of their chair and getting concussions.
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right, and so it shouldn't.
Car
just,
accidents. I mean,
right, should not be thought of just as a sport-related occurrence. Okay. And I don't even make jokes about concussions anymore, so I appreciate it.
They're not funny.
Nope, they're not funny.
I got one playing slow pitch.
And Judy Maxwell got one playing slow pitch softball back in the day. And hasn't affected you at all, Judy, so that's good.
So what you have here is the policy and the regulation. I don't know if you had more to add, Judy?
No.
Questions?
Thank you, Judy.
Wonderful.
We have one edit, but we'll give it to Kara. Right from there.
Okay.
Fantastic, excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then lastly is the authorization use, what is it, 4624. This is a regulation, not a policy. This will be posted far and wide. We're finding ourselves having to do this given the amount of student devices. And this, the thing that caught my eye, I don't know if it's important for the board, is what we're trying to do is write policy for both district and student-owned devices. So while they're in school, this policy applies to their laptops, iPads, iPhones, cell phones, smartphones, etc. So if you get a chance to take a look at it, this will going to be on the agenda for another 2 weeks, and if there are any major philosophical disagreements, questions, conversations, we can have a debate conversation there. I don't know if you want to add anything, Dr.
The only
Myers.
thing I'd like to add is just think about the increase in cyberbullying, and this has implications for dignity. It's certainly a touch point for dignity for all students with the harassment that happens online and through social media networks.
And privacy is a big piece of these regulations, obviously, and for good reason. Anything else?
Good to go.
Great job by policy committee. Great job, Sean.
Thank you, Dr. Myers.
And Dr. Well, and not to mention Dr. And that's a coffee cup. So thank you, Judy. Thank you, Leslie. So moving on to item number B, letter B, sorry. Concussion thing. Go ahead.
I'll move the refunding bond resolution presented in the agenda.
I'll second.
Speak to it if you like.
Please do.
Asked the financial advisor to take a peek at whether we had, with interest rates dropping even further, if we had any opportunities to do a refunding of some of our bonds. We will be able to do the 2003 series bonds, and we're also looking at 2002 A and Bs that maybe produce some savings. What I'm asking, what we're doing here is we're authorizing a refunding of all 3 series. When it's ready to go, if interest rates produce savings for the 3, we would go ahead. Margaret would go ahead. If they don't, she'd only go ahead with, I'm still pretty sure the 2003s will produce savings, but the other 2 may not produce savings for us. So just authorizing her to go ahead with those. I don't know, just finds us $50,000 a year for the next couple of years. What are we, our building aid's what, 50?
About 58.
So our building aid will go down, we'll go down based on that, but some of it's real money, so,
What does it cost to refinance like that?
Building aid would go down.
What does it
because
cost?
your
payments reduced.
We were at that.
Oh.
Because you're paying less debt service. You saved debt service, so you're able to go down slightly.
Right,
So
that's
but
okay.
still,
The costs are cooked
Anyway.
into it, are cooked into the refunding. That doesn't mean that I haven't been torturing Mr. Kozlowski over who he's chosen to do it. and how
On the
much
face
we're
of it,
paying.
you think you're gonna get 0.5%?
Well, these are refunding bonds, Jay, so it's hard to measure it in that way because you're putting up an escrow to pay off the bonds up when they get to their call date. So you're not saving, it's
more complicated.
It's a little more complicated, so it's just a matter of whether we produce enough savings or not, whether it's worth it or not.
It's really just doing that calculation, whether you should refi your mortgage after the closing cost. Do you save enough on a monthly basis? Go
In this case, you're putting up an escrow because the bonds aren't callable for another couple of years. So you gotta have that cooked into it too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You got your okay. This is an example for me why I like this board and the diversity of experience and expertise. Just ask the question and then figure out. So you're saying, we're saying it's just 50,000, but we know what that means, right? That's a program. That's a teacher, right? And so to be able to ask those kinds of questions is partly why we find ourselves in different positions than many of our neighbors, because these small things, after you keep doing multiple things, they add up. So just that's what a learning process it is to serve on the finance committee. So thank you, good folks.
I certainly want to thank Brad for pushing it. If you don't push, the The fiscal advisors will just do what they always do.
They were not going to call us.
They weren't?
That's right. I can assure you, they were not going to call us.
But really, but market conditions really warrant, you know, where are our interest rates when the time comes when we go out?
Well, and Margaret pointed out to me that, you know, I wondered why everybody wasn't doing this, and of course I forget that our neighbors get 95% building aid, so they really don't care whether they save any money or not. Even though I believe most of them are state taxpayers as well, and they should care.
But the state's picking up most of the bill.
We're the exception. Why don't we follow 30% amendment?
I like that. But Brad, just for my
Dr. Brown.
for my own sake, Brad, reading through the resolution. Sorry.
Yeah.
And we will should point out that the entire resolution is like 40 pages.
Yeah, and I have the hard copy if anybody here wants to see.
And you've got it on the web. And you've got it on the website.
Yes.
Right, it's on the website. It's not all listed here, obviously trying to save paper, but it's on your Dropbox. You know, Brad, are we talking, you know, if you did all the series, it would be like 4.9 million, 4.8 altogether? That we would be retiring and then reissuing bonds for that amount?
I thought it was a little
more than that.
5.4.
Yeah, it was over 5.
Yeah, it was a little over 5 million.
It wasn't entirely clear from the
Yeah,
from the
I
numbers.
know. Well, and he, unfortunately, what he did was provide us a schedule that had all of our bonds on it, many of which make no sense to try and refund. But I think he just plugged everything in.
Okay. So that is we need to pass this, correct? Did we move it?
I did. Move and seconded.
Okay. I missed these things.
Who moved to second?
Sean seconded.
Sean second.
So Kira and I missed that part of the meeting, so thank you. You've got that, Kira? Okay. Any other questions at this point? Again, it's something that will be done if it saves the local taxpayers and our budget money, right? Okay.
Great.
All in favor? Okay, very good. That's everyone. Hoping no one was going to vote against that. So, any other board business at this point? Nothing else is listed on the agenda. I'm seeing head shaking. So, really, on to the last item, board announcements. Anyone?
Finance Committee is listed here as June 21st, that being IHS commencement. We moved that to June 25th.
That would be the Monday before the next meeting.
Monday before.
We got an audit meeting.
And we got an audit committee meeting.
What time is that? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 5, yeah.
I think it conflicts with policy.
Well, how can we have a finance and policy?
We moved our policy meeting to June 25th,
Yeah.
the day before the,
Yeah, we just moved finance to that same time.
I just realized that she's.
But we're running out of days, Judy. The problem is,
Well,
And they're both at the same time.
if people want to attend any of these graduations and moving ups, we're running out of
Sean's on
days.
both committees.
4 p.m.?
I won't be here. so
Judy, 4 p.m.?
whatever you want. Yeah, I can do 4.
Perfect.
Policy at 4,
Policy at 4.
facilities at 5?
Yeah, and actually, well, Judy, I don't think we have much to do.
No, we don't.
Great.
Okay, that's what.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't have work to do.
Audit tomorrow at 5.
Right, audit committee is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Any other board announcements?
Yes, I'd like that.
Judy Max?
Yeah, the curriculum committee was very fortunate enough to go to both the math and the literacy, and I'd like to commend both committees. I'd like to commend Lily Kavanaugh and Jane Kestner for the math and the selection of Singapore math program. That committee met many, many times and visited 2 different school systems. The literacy committee, I'd like to commend Lydia Ali and Lynn Vanderwart. And that committee also met many, many times. And now reading, writing, ELA, whatever is tied to core standards. And both committees have worked very, very hard.
Sean, go ahead.
I'd like to wish one of our board members a happy 45th birthday, Mr. Seth Peacock. Happy birthday, Seth.
Today?
Oh, wow. That's why it's so quiet.
Yes, that's been quiet.
And I wanted to make sure that was on camera, so I had to say it.
Exactly.
Oh.
Seth has been quietly contemplating his 45th birthday.
Exactly.
Anything else, Brad? Go ahead.
Can we sing? I'd like to move, go to, return to executive session for purposes of discussion of employment history of particular persons, negotiations, and litigation.
Excellent, thank you. We're in executive.